So tonight we're hearing from Steve Mulder of Solar Faithful and Bob Chapman, who's a native Detroiter and has been involved in around Michigan Interfaith Power and Light. And the two of them have been working together for years. Steve retired in 2017 from the corporate career, and you'll hear some of that perspective and the way he sees things. But he became a regional organizer for the Climate Witness project when he retired, and in that way he's been collaborating with other organizations, and he actually helped launch Solar Faithful. And he'll talk to you about what that is in terms of what he calls the 4 E's: efficiency, electrification, renewable energy, and environmental restoration. And what he says about that is he's driven in this work by his love and concern for creation and for future generations. Bob Chapman, our second speaker tonight, is a native Detroiter and a lifelong, you say Michigan resident, I'm going to say Michigander. So for people who live
Sure.
in Michigan, that's the right word, right? Most of his career has been centered on working to ensure that energy efficiency and renewables are options for everybody at all income levels and all geographic areas. So in that way, he's been serving in Detroit for the nonprofit EcoWorks and the Michigan Interfaith Power and Light. He is, his wife says, he's retired from paid work. That's what my wife says about me as well. But he's been actively helping to green his own church in downtown Detroit, and his faith, he says, pursues him to work for a better, more just world for his children and grandchildren. I think we can all identify with that. With that, I'll turn it over, I think, to Steve first and then to Brian, and let them control. Let me know what assistance you need, and I'll go.
Okay. Thank you, David. Just started sharing my screen. You should see a big Solar Faithful logo on your screen. Got that?
I've got it.
Okay. So I just like to tell you a little bit about the background of Solar Faithful, but more importantly, how we work with congregations and with faith-based nonprofits. And then really spend a little bit of time talking about two new things that we're doing, ESSAs, which are energy shared savings agreements, and congregate lending. Aggregate lending is a method that people can invest in our work and help to fund these ESSAs. So I'll tell you more about that when we get there. So yeah, David told you a little bit about me, but what I add that's on this screen. Maybe just the fact that that picture there, I'm standing in front of the solar array at my previous church, Church of the Servant. We had a solar array there for many years. I think it's probably 12 or 15 years by now. I'm now at St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Grand Rapids, Michigan. That's a big downtown Episcopal church. And I'm working on getting solar installed there. So I am a lifelong lover of creation, all sorts of outdoor activities, and a dad and a pop. And those are the two roles that really are the biggest roles in my life. And so this is really my motivation. These are various grandkids and great nieces, a couple of years old now, but I'm just so disturbed and upset and heartbroken about the world that we're leaving our kids and their kids, and your kids and your grandkids and everybody else's. So this is what's motivating me primarily, is to try to limit the already problematic situation that we have as much as we can with the time that I have left on the planet. So the Episcopal denomination created this goal a few years back that they would be carbon neutral in operations and the work of staff, standing commissions, interim bodies, and general convention by 2030. And I didn't see this until maybe last year or the year before that. And I thought, wow, that is a big goal. In the corporate world, people sometimes talk about aspirational goals. And aspirational goals, as you probably know, are goals that nobody thinks you're really going to do, but they're just nice to talk about. So I wondered about this one. Is this an aspirational goal or is this a real goal? And the thing that I compare it to is what we call BHAGs. And I don't know if anybody outside of the corporate world knows that term. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal. And so that came out of a business book that came out in the 90s, I think. But the concept is that a organization that really does important work and really gets commitment from its employees or from its folks that are impacted by it, is one that sets these BHAGs, which are the kinds of goals that kind of take your breath away. And you say, like this one actually, and you say, wow, that's amazing. That's impossible. How could we just can't do that? But then you start thinking about, well, let's just pretend like we can do it and let's figure out how we're going to do it. So I'm hoping this is a BHAG for the denomination, not one of these aspirational goals that nobody takes seriously. So this is Solar Faithful. We are a nonprofit. We were created in 2023, out of meetings that were going on between the Climate Witness Project, a Solar Faithful group on the east side of the state, Charros Energy, which is an installer, and I don't think I mentioned MIPO, Michigan Interfaith Power and Light. So we were having weekly meetings discussing how come so few churches have solar and what can we do to help that process. And so we finally ended up saying, well, let's just start a nonprofit and let's see if we can really have a big impact. And so here's a couple of things about us. Our mission is to bring technical expertise and client-friendly financing so that everybody can participate in the just energy transition. So we're specifically thinking about historically underrepresented communities, low-income communities, and people of all faiths, meaning not just focusing on Christian churches, but all houses of worship and all faiths. And the reason for that is simply that these are the organizations that have not been very active, not been able to be active in the just energy transition. So we wanted to focus on that. We wanted to actually our goal. Well, I'll tell you what our goal about that was in a minute. And so our vision really is that that we live in a world where faith-based organizations are really leading the charge. And I can tell you today that that's not the case. So there are some wonderful things going on in individual churches and some denominations, but it's not really the faith organizations that are leading where we need to get to, and we feel like they should be. By the way, as I'm going through this, we're a pretty small group, so do just speak up if you have questions or you want to talk about something more in depth as I'm going. So we also created really 3 BHAGs. The first one was, we said, let's double the number of houses of worship in Michigan. So we are Michigan based, and when we started, we said, we always thought we would scale up to cover the whole United States, but we wanted to start and get established in Michigan. So we said, well, as a starting point, let's double the number of houses of worship that have solar in Michigan. And so when we started, there were only about 30. There's about 10,000 churches in Michigan. Houses of worship, I should say, not churches, but houses of worship of all faiths. About 30 of them had solar, as far as we could tell. We weren't, we're not, I'm not saying we have nailed every single one of them, but this map happens to be on our website. And if you're curious about where congregations are in Michigan that have solar, you should be able to find them on this map. And if you go out to this map and you find that your congregation has solar, or you're not on the map, or you know of a church or a congregation that has solar that's not on our map, please let us know because we want to keep this updated. So there we were, 30 congregations. Today there's about 70. So we did do well with that BHAG. We did achieve a doubling. And I shouldn't say we, just Solar Faithful, but we're part of getting more attention, I think, in houses of worship. And some, as you know, when one house of worship does solar, a lot of others get interested, and some of them do follow suit. So we feel like we've probably had some impact on these other ones too. So our second BHAG was the one I started to describe earlier, that about half of our community partners, that's sort of our jargon for people that we're working with, so the houses of worship and the nonprofits. We wanted half of those to be from historically underrepresented or low-income communities and all faiths. So I would say we're about on track with that. We've done pretty well. We started with, I think in the initial discussions, I think everybody was white, and not everybody was Christian, but pretty sure everybody was white. So that takes time to build to establish relationships with all these other folks. and to build trust with them. And so I feel really good about this particular goal because we have established relationships. We have I think three of our board members are African American, two are Jewish. So it is we do have a pretty good balance going. And I think about half of our projects have been with groups from those three groups that I just mentioned. This happens to be Pilgrim Baptist Church in Detroit. They were part of a project that Bob is going to tell you about that his church was also involved with. And so this is a black church in Detroit, and this is one of the congregations in Detroit that were becoming resiliency hubs. So then our third big, hairy, audacious goal is to increase the solar adoption rate for faith-based organizations in Michigan to exceed the nationwide commercial adoption rate, which is about 4%. So if you look at all the businesses and commercial buildings in the country, about 4% of them have solar. So we want to do better than that because remember, we want to be leading. So right now we have about 70 congregations that have solar of 10,000, as I mentioned. That's an adoption rate of about 0.7%. So we got a long ways to go if we're going to get to 4%. So that's a very exciting goal to me because that really is a BHAG. That is really something that we're going after, and we think we can get there. This is Hope RCA in Holland, Michigan. It's one of the most recent congregations that we installed solar on. This is a very interesting congregation because they happen to be in Holland, Michigan, where the utility rates are very low because they have a municipal utility, but they are so driven by their desire to do the right thing for the creation that they're doing this solar, even though it's not economically particularly money saving for them. So that's very interesting and exciting to me. A lot of congregations are not motivated primarily by creation care or only by creation care. But whatever motivates any congregation, we're happy to have them talking to us. So here's our story in one slide. We started in 2023. We are a nonprofit. We've learned to partner with a whole bunch of other nonprofits now, both faith-based and secular, I guess you could say. We've completed 23 projects. We've got 21 other projects that are contracted and under construction. So very shortly, we'll have about 45 completed projects. This says 500 plus community partners that are currently considering solar with Solar Faithful. I think it's really bigger than that number, but anyway, we're talking to lots and lots of congregations now. You know how it is with anything that you're starting new. It takes a lot of effort to get the first 3 or 4. But now we're at the point where we're constantly getting calls and interest from people that we don't even know how they heard about us. And so that's a good place to be. So we're in a position where we have some strong headwinds, as you know, from the federal government's actions and from issues in the business world, production and so on. But we also have some great offerings, and we really are making some great progress. So we have 50 plus congregations that have said, we would like to do the ESSA. We would like to do the Energy Shared Savings Agreement. And so we're right now trying to get the funding put together to make all those 50 happen. We've got 5 that are now contracted. So it's a new program for us, but it's already up and running. So what it really does is provides an opportunity for congregations to have third-party ownership, which is similar to a power purchase agreement, which you may have heard of before. And when we started Solar Faithful, we were relying on an investor, an impact investor that wanted to do lots of projects, including very small ones, and were willing to write the PPAs for those. So that's a situation where they actually own the panels and then they sell the power to the congregation or the nonprofit. What happened, partly because of the federal government's actions, but partly because of various market forces and who knows what, hardly any of these impact investors are still doing power purchase agreements because they're looking for really big projects. So I shouldn't say they're not doing them. They're not doing them for the size of projects that we're doing most of the time. So that was kind of a trial for us about a year ago, trying to figure out, well, if we don't have that as an opportunity for congregations, if they can only participate if they come up with the money themselves, that really limits the folks that are going to be able to participate. And so we finally decided, well, let's figure out how to become the PPA provider ourselves. So we use a different name, but it's very similar in concept. So the ESSA, the Solar Faithful, will own the panels. The congregation doesn't have to pay anything, but simply sign a contract that they'll buy the power that's produced by the panels, and that they will save 10% on their utility, their electric bills. So this is just kind of the pitch that we make to congregations. This is one of the larger solar arrays that we've done for a church in Grandville, Michigan. This happens to be a church that has a lot going on in the building. As you can tell, there's multiple floors, multiple offices in there. There's daycare, all sorts of different things happening in that location beyond just the worship. And so they need a pretty big array to drive all that. So we say we are in a climate crisis. We don't have any doubt about that. And I won't give you the whole litany, but you're well aware of wildfires and heating and pollution, all those things. But we're also full of hope because as people of faith, we look at hope as not an emotion, but as a commitment, as a requirement, as something that we have to do. Partly because you can't really take action unless you have hope, and you can't really. I mean, if you gain hope also by taking action. So it's one of those positive spirals. And so we are full of hope, and we intend to do everything we can. So one thing that we think is really critical, and we just have to do, among all the many things that we need to do, is to eliminate greenhouse gases and particulate pollution. So the particulate pollution, as you know, is what causes all of the asthma and lung disease, heart disease, and so on, especially in lower income communities, usually brown communities. All of our houses of worship and nonprofits can do this. So I probably should amend that because we're finding now that there are some that are very difficult to actually make work economically, to make pencil. But we're keeping our big hairy audacious goals in mind, and we're committing ourselves to finding ways to make sure that all houses of worship can participate while they're saving money. So that's another motivation. That's another reason why to do solar on your house of worship. You can save money. Another one is I don't have a whole lot of research to back this up, but we anecdotally hear this all the time, that when a church does solar, or a congregation does solar, I should say, the members become more engaged. They're excited. They feel proud of their church, their congregation, their house of worship. And it tends to attract other people to the church. So especially young people and young families. So I can tell you that happened at my church, the one that I showed you the picture of. I talked to a number of people back then who said, I asked them, well, what brought you to Church of the Servant? Well, it was when I saw your solar panel array. I thought, oh, a church that's doing that, that's a church that I'm interested in. So this idea of engagement. And by the way, these are actually three kids from this Lord of Lords church in Detroit, Michigan. And that's a church that's pastored by Reverend Glass. And he is on the board of Solar Faithful. And then the fourth thing is it does inspire your members in your community to follow your lead. So we do find that solar is contagious. People see it, they get interested, they think, oh, if they could do it, why can't we do it? And so it does spread just by making it visible. So those are the four main reasons why we encourage congregations to consider solar. But then why Solar Faithful? And this picture is the Green Sky Hill Indian Methodist Church. So this is a tiny array on a tiny church in Charlevoix, Michigan, which is a tiny town. And it's an indigenous congregation, partly indigenous, partly Caucasian. So we think that what makes Solar Faithful, if not unique, at least sort of stand out, is that first bullet, financial and technical expertise. And I always say that that's not me. I don't have a lot of financial or technical expertise. I've learned a lot in the 4 or 5 years that I've been doing this with Solar Faithful. But what we do have is a lot of other people who do have a lot of technical and financial expertise, especially Rob Raffson, who's the executive director of Solar Faithful. The guy is just amazing, and the financial ideas that he comes up with are just phenomenal. So there's a great deal of, one of the biggest problems that congregations have is they don't know how to do this stuff. They don't understand the technology. They don't know who to go to, and they don't have the money. So those are the two biggest impediments to congregations. So we think we are able to bridge those. And then our justice and equity focus that I talked about before, and then those other bullets that you see there, those are also very important things to us. And some of them really have to be developed more further than we have so far. So why now? So this is Bill McGibbon. If you haven't read this book, Here Comes the Sun, I highly recommend it. It's just a wonderful book because it is so positive. It is so hope generating. And his basic premise is that the world is moving to solar. And it doesn't matter what the federal government does. It doesn't matter what anybody does at this point because it's simply become the cheapest way to create power today. And so it's taking off all over the world. So he says, I have little doubt that we'll run the world on sun and wind in 40 years. But if it takes us anything like 40 years to get there, then it will be a broken planet. And our energy sources will hardly matter. So there is a sense of urgency. We have to do this now. We can't be waiting, for 10 more years or 20 more years. So the other reason why now is the IRA funding, which probably you all know about, and that is going away. So it has already gone away for residential solar, and for commercial solar, it will go away at the end of next year, 2027. So we kind of feel like this rebate has been sort of oversold because what's happening now is the cost of energy is going up so rapidly that it really doesn't matter if you don't get that 30% credit. You're still going to come out ahead financially. But you still want to try to get it if you can between now and the end of next year. So that's another reason why it's good to take action now. So as I said, RAP has come up with many very creative financing ideas. We're also talking to lots of grant providers. We've gotten several grants. We got a big federal government grant that half of it was clawed back. But all of those things kind of contribute to our two basic methods for financing these installations. So the first one is very simple. It's a direct purchase. So we can help the congregation to raise the capital or use existing funds or borrow the funds or employ congregant lending. So in this case, the congregation probably has some resources, probably has some knowledge some technical knowledge, probably has some willingness to borrow money or the ability to raise money. And so they can do that. And if they do, then they'll own the equipment and they'll realize all of the savings. So this is the way to go if you can do it. And so that's great for, congregations that have always been able to do things like this. But it's not such a great thing for congregations that are more strapped financially. So in this case, the congregation owns the equipment. They're responsible for the operations, responsible for insurance. Both of those are not big things, but they do get the biggest bang for their buck this way. So the other way, so I was saying before that we previously provided PPAs, power purchase agreements, through an outside source. Now we're doing these energy shared savings agreements internally. So in this case, Solar Faithful will own and operate the equipment. So the community partner, that's the congregation or the nonprofit, will pay nothing. And they'll sign a contract for 25 years that says that they'll purchase the power produced for 10% less than the utility rate. So one of the cool things about this is the congregation is able to buy out the system after 5 years. So if they're in a situation where right now they don't have the money, but maybe they could raise the money over the next 5 years, then they could start with this ESSA and then buy the system out and realize the full savings themselves after 5 years of the ESSA agreement. So the big thing here is it's easy. It's easy for the congregation. So really all they have to do is sign a contract and be willing to have the solar panels put on their building or on their property.
I have a
This
question
is
about that. Could I ask a question? That last chart,
absolutely
when you say you buy back the system after 5 years, do these systems appreciate? Or in other words, you won't be paying 100% of the cost that was originally required to buy it? Or
they depreciate, so
yeah,
you
I
would pay
figured.
less than that.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you will. Yeah,
yeah,
and
you
these
would pay less
systems,
than.
and how long? What is the typical life of these systems?
Yeah. So these are great questions. So the panels are warranted for 25 years, but they're expected to produce power for 40 years or more. So they do degrade slightly every year in their efficiency. So I think they degrade by about 0.5% per year. So after 40 years, they will be producing less power than they did when they were brand new, but they'll still be producing power. And
And then,
so also just one more thing. The 25-year contract, if the congregation just sticks with that ESSA for 25 years, at the end of that time, they can just take ownership of the panels, really no cost. I think it's $1 or something. Or they can say, well, we'd like to just continue with the ESSA. Or they can say, well, we're done. Just take the panels and go your way. So go ahead with your other question.
well, the other question I had, because I noticed you can get a 10% savings if it's domestic. Are the panels typically domestically sourced, or are they from other?
Right. Right. So most of our proposals are assuming that we'll get the 30% discount, but not the 10%, just because that's a little bit that's a market that's changing rapidly, so sometimes all the parts are available domestically and sometimes they're not. So I would say most of the time we do get the additional 10% also for domestic content. But we don't usually put that into the proposal just because we want to be as conservative as possible. That makes sense?
Yeah, yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. So this is what an actual proposal looks like with one page of it. This is an actual proposal. I don't recall what church it is, but it's a church in Grand Rapids. So you can see here, if this church were to go with the ESSA, we would estimate that they're going to save $117,000 over the course of 25 years. So if they do a direct purchase, but they borrow the money to do that from a bank loan at 7.5%, they would save $208,000. If they purchase the panels, but they use congregate supported lending, then they would save $235,000. So the congregate lending is that concept where anybody can loan money for a project and earn 4.5% for 10 years. In the meantime, we'll use that money to do these projects. And then the third option there down there below, that's the simplest and the one that saves the most money. So if the congregation has all the money, or they want to raise it, and they have a big donor, all these things happen. Once in a while, a congregation can do a big array just with money they have because they've been renting out their parking lot or something like that, and they have this pot of money that they haven't spent, and they're not sure what to do with it. So they can just commit the whole thing and go for it. So you see, we are just estimating that we're going to get the 30% tax credit, not the 40%. So questions on this? Does this make sense? Okay. So again, what we always encourage people to do is if you're interested in this, just fill out the interest form, send us some tax. We'll respond and ask for tax, not tax, utility bills. and then we'll put together a proposal like this. The reason why is because these projects are all very different. Even within the same state of Michigan, there are multiple utilities, different conditions on the ground. The building might have different issues. So it's best just to do a proposal based on the actual church that's interested in doing this.
I had
Okay,
another
here's a
question. But another question. Sorry about this.
sure. No, no,
Uh,
this is great.
one of the complaints I've heard about solar power is that it can create reflections. So our church is in a residential neighborhood. Is there any concern that the neighbors are all going to start seeing all these reflections and problems from the panels?
I gotta say, I've never heard that before. I've never heard of that. I've had panels on my house for 10 years and nobody's complained about any reflections.
Yeah, these
I don't
are
know.
the problem where I've seen it happen is where you've seen these solar farms that are actually on the ground.
Mm,
And so
okay.
there's it's just more likely to get reflection. But that's a question that came up that's like, is this going to cause a problem in the neighborhood somehow? So it sounds like it's not, since it's on a roof and everything.
Yeah. Well, it could
If
be on
you
the roof, it
if
could
you
be on the ground.
if you do put them on the ground, you put them close to the ground, and they're not pointed well at the sun. If they're pointed optimally at the sun, wherever the sun is going to, the reflection is going to go right back to the sun, right? Because you know, and that's the way mirrors work. So if you're saying there's some mirror effect from the glass, it's going to go more or less back to the sun. They're stationary though, so as the sun moves through the sky, there is a possibility that some of the sunlight will be reflected somewhere else. And so that's a matter of sighting and consideration about where you're putting them, right?
Yeah. Has anybody ever heard of that being a problem at a congregation?
No,
No.
no.
No, I don't think it, I don't, I can't conceive of it myself.
Okay.
So
Well, someone brought it up to me, and so I was going to ask the question.
sure,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so I've already talked about this congruent lending concept. So I think about this as kind of the other side of the ESSAs. So this is one way that we're able to fund these opportunities for congregations that can't really just buy out the panels themselves. So the individual loans money, individual or a group of individuals loans money to Solar Faithful. They'll earn 4.5% interest. It's a 10-year note. The monthly payments start to the lender immediately after we, get the loan, and then it's just their monthly payments for the duration of 10 years. So the funds are used to fund solar projects for these under-resourced congregations. So this is one of the ways that we're raising money to do these ESSAs. We're also looking for additional grant money, and we did receive a $30,000 grant for these kinds of projects in Grand Rapids. We're going to go back to that grantor with our success story in the fall and ask for more money. And we're talking to other lenders, or not lenders, but grantors. So our big, hairy, audacious goal here is we want to raise $2 million this year in this manner. We're already well over $100,000, really without trying too hard. So I think it's just such an appealing thing to people, especially retired people who may not have enough money to just donate it outright, but want to support this kind of work, and if they can earn a little interest on it, great. So we do have a video on our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and just type in Solar Faithful, you'll find it. Also, it's going to be in the resources that Heather is going to provide after the meeting. So that video is kind of cool because all it is three people who have loaned money to us in this way and three congregations that have received ESSAs. And so it's kind of cool to see both sides of that.
So a
5 minutes.
question is, can you loan money to your specific church for their project, or is it just a general pot of money that you're loaning?
Yes, either way. I'm not certain that anybody has said they want to dedicate it or earmark the money for a congregation yet. But one of the thoughts that I've had, even for my church in Grand Rapids, is to go to the vestry and say, what if we offered this as an investment opportunity to the church? I'm almost certain we would get enough people that would want to loan us money to provide the whole process, the whole project. Okay.
So to stop you, so I just put a link to what I think is your video there, and I can probably
Okay.
watch it. I might be able to find the answer to this, but I might as well ask it as long as you're here. If I wanted to do this, but my congregation already had solar panels, as you know it does. If I wanted to do it as an individual, how do I know where my money is going and what's going on with it?
Well, again, you could earmark it. You could say, I want this money to go to this particular congregation, or you could just loan the money to Solar Faithful, and we'll use it for whatever congregation we feel needs to, that wants to do an ESSA
Mhm.
and is waiting in line to get one.
Okay, so I can do either.
Yep, either
Good,
way.
thank you.
Yeah, and I think let me think about this now. One of the loaners on the video already had solar at their church also, but he said, I would like to help other churches do this, and so that's what he ended up doing. Okay, these are just some snapshots, and I'm just going to run through these quickly. So these are Episcopal churches with solar in Michigan that we're aware of. So St. Philip's and Beulah, and these also run the gamut of very large arrays to very small arrays. Here's Emmanuel Hastings. There's Bob Shermer, who's on the call, I believe. They were a very early adopter. St. Peter's St. Peter's that you'll hear more about from Bob in a minute. I'm going to try to speed up here so he has plenty of time. Christ Church in Detroit, the Episcopal Church of the Incarnation in Ann Arbor, Genesis of Ann Arbor. If you're not familiar with this organization, it's quite amazing. It's a house of worship that's shared between a Jewish house of worship and an Episcopal house of worship. And on the Jewish side, the guy that was instrumental in all of this, putting solar there, is the president of our board. And then the reason I'm showing these is just to kind of give you the idea of the diversity and the range of the kinds of projects that we're doing. So here's a small church, fairly large Lutheran church, another one. This one happens to be the pastor at this Bethlehem Lutheran in Traverse City is just on fire about this stuff. So he's become a major ambassador in the Traverse City area. And so now we're working with he's on the board of the Traverse City, Grand Traverse Habitat for Humanity. And so he's trying to help them get solar with our help. Here's a Jewish organization, a fairly large nonprofit. Black Church in Lansing, another Jewish organization, a Christian school in Grand Rapids. That's a pretty big array. This was such a great project. These kids were so amazing. Like I was blessed to be able to be there when they dedicated the array, and those kids were just so much fun. They're just so excited about it. And then a couple more congregations. We've created these lawn signs, so we're starting to put those on where the congregation is willing to let us do that when we do a new project. So then I just want to say a quick word about community solar. So we worked with the Episcopal Diocese of Maine to do a community solar array in Maine. And this solar array provides power to about 150 low-income residents. So this was a project that they wanted to do, and we helped them do that. So we really got a lot of experience with community solar through doing this project. So you can only do these kinds of projects where there's enabling legislation in the state. So those yellow states there are the places that could do something like that project. However, lots of states are pushing to get that capability. So I expect this map to be changing, hopefully fairly rapidly in the coming years. We've been working on it in Michigan for sure. So it just so happened that the Episcopal Diocese of New Hampshire learned about the project that we did in Maine and said they were really interested in doing that and would like to do something similar. So theirs is a little bit different. What they're doing is they want to do a community solar array to power their churches. So they have 44 parishes in New Hampshire in that diocese. So that's what we're working on with them right now. We're also working with the Episcopal Diocese of Indianapolis. This is not a community solar thing, but it's just a project where we're trying to explore whether we could do something for congregations in Indianapolis with the help of the Lilly Foundation. And then we're also working with the diocese in Chicago. They have 5 churches that got energy audits from Colby May, and now they're interested in solar. So we've provided proposals for those 5 congregations. Okay, so that's it for me. That's the QR code for our website and my email address if you want to communicate with me. So, Bob, I hope I left you enough time to talk about St. Peter's. So I'll just go right into your slides.
Thanks, Steve. I was there at the beginning with the Solar Faithful, and in some ways we were ahead of the curve. And early, if we were doing it today, I would go right in with Solar Faithful and go in the direction of the congregant lending. So let me tell you our story quickly. St. Peter's is a very small in population church. I go on to the next slide because it's the picture tells a lot. We're in a rapidly gentrifying part of the city. It's a kitty corner from the old Tiger Stadium, the old Briggs Stadium, before that Navin Stadium, which is now almost all housing, although there is still a ball diamond that the Police Athletic League has. But we were getting calls almost every week from developers. Would we sell our parking lot? Would we sell the church? Could they relocate us to, quote, a more suitable location? So finally, our pastor at the time, we put up this sign that looks like a real estate sign, except it says not for sale since 1858. If you were to go in deeper, and the thing on the right, the little white box, says open house on 10:30 every Sunday, which is when our services is. So for us, issues of creation care comes down to right relationship with the more than human humans and more than human. It's not just creation care, because we often think of creation caring for we tend to think more that creation cares for us, but we're trying to be in right relationship. It's also a justice issue for us because we live right next. The church is located right next to zip code 48217, which is the most polluted zip code in the state of Michigan. Very high asthma rates. So particulate pollution, fossil fuel, carbon pollution is bad news, and anything we could do to cut down our carbon footprint would be being a good neighbor. And the other thing is that we were determined to hold that space. We weren't going to be pushed out. We've had a soup kitchen in the basement of St. Peter's since 1976, not run by St. Peter's because we're too small, but a number of Catholic parishes led by, supported a priest, Father Lumpkin, who started out of Day House, Dorothy Day model, and has run the soup kitchen for 50 years, just retired this last year. And we've created a separate 501c3 that the soup kitchens continued. We also have shower and laundry facilities for the homeless that we created through another 501c3 just to do that, because St. Peter's itself was way too small to be able to do those things. And I guess, Steve, that's one of the things that I appreciate about Solar Faithful is there's so much that can be done, not in terms of what I can do, but what we can do, or what we can do by banding together. There's a lot of houses of worship that solar might not be right for them in terms of rooftop solar, for example, but that doesn't mean they couldn't get involved in community solar. They couldn't advocate for better solar policies. Michigan is not very solar friendly. Other states are more solar friendly, but I'm about to go into something else. So let me tell you what we did. You could go to the next one, the next slide, please. So we did a power purchase agreement But because Solar Faithful really wasn't up and running, we did it ourselves. And when I say we, I mean my wife and I did an LLC, created our own little corporation, Sun Common, that we named it. And as she might put it, we put our money where my mouth was. And we put up the upfront money for a small array. Basically, it's like 11 kW, which is not a very big array. Fortunately, that picture that Steve just showed you, just 2 weeks ago, we got new panels up on the south side, and I'm going to touch on that in a few minutes. But the way that worked is that we put up the initial purchase, which then, because we were the legislation didn't allow at that time. This is 2019. The legislation didn't allow for tax credits for nonprofits, so we took the tax credit, which meant that there was a much smaller price for the church, then created a contract so that we would get paid back only through the purchasing of the power that got generated. And right from the beginning, it was starting with a lower rate than DTE was charging. So the church started saving from day one. And actually, we only put in about a 2% a year accelerator. And that's already woefully, I mean, like right now, the church is still paying about 13 cents a kilowatt hour for the power that we generate with the power on that roof, where they're upwards of about 19, 22 cents, depending on whether you count all the taxes and things like that. So we did the power purchase agreement as a congregant owner. In other groups, I've seen where several congregants went together. And the one thing I want to say about this is we could not have donated the money for this, but we could lend the money for this and get back a certain amount per year, knowing that we would eventually get it all back. So it was a really good, for us, a socially responsible investing is how I think of it. And even better, it's local socially responsible investing. Okay, you could go to the next. There's a lot I wanted to say about our solar, but real quickly in terms of the data, which for me is I'm not a wonky person, so I don't get really deep into this, but what you will notice is, the savings to St. Peter's will be $40,000 minimum. And we included in that cost, by the way, the one thing that does wear out with solar, the panels just sit there. There's no moving parts. And so there's almost nothing to go wrong. And you'll notice those concrete blocks. This is on a flat roof. They don't have to punch any holes in the roof. When they do punch holes in the roof, the systems, they're so used to, the contractors now, they've got a great system where it's like a whole bunch of your roof is going to leak before that'll leak because of the way that is done. But in this case, they're just ballasted, as they call it. And there's no moving parts. But the inverter that changes the DC power that it generates to AC can and does wear out sometimes faster than it was supposed to. So we included in the our purchase, we got this warranty. For once, it worked to get the extended warranty. And sure enough, after just 6 years, last year, something happened with that inverter, and it was replaced at no charge. And we did not want to get to the point where we were about to turn it over to the church and the inverter go bad. So we made sure that inverter, we were going to be replacing it. And you'll notice that the ROI means return on investment. We were not looking to make money on this. We were looking to be socially responsible investors. So we were only looking at a 2% return on investment in terms of how this went. When you set up a contract like this, you can really set up the ROI sort of any whatever people want and are willing to do. But that's what we did. And we have now gone from that 11 kW, and you'll see a couple other pictures. We're about to go to 25 because we're very careful with our energy in general. I think that's gonna handle more than half of our electric bill. You can, next, please. Thank you. So from the standpoint of the solar that we're talking about now, just as a sample case, there was no upfront cost to the church. We received the tax credits and passed that savings along to the House of Worship through St. Peter's. We've been members for 20 years. And St. Peter's started saving immediately. And they can only pay for the documented power that's produced. There's this national, it's called Solar Edge. There's these national standards and applications that almost everybody uses the same one. I think Steve would back me up, would agree on that when people do the site for solar to determine whether you should even have or could have solar and how much power it might generate, they're using a federal standard to do that for the most part, if they're reputable. They're using a federal program to do that. And for the how much power is being produced, there's an app. There's an app for that. That is what we can use to show how much power those produce. And if something goes wrong, and something did go wrong once with this, where I wasn't paying attention to the app, and a few months went by and it wasn't generating electricity into the meter. It was generating electricity, but it wasn't generated into the meter. Well, the church didn't pay for that. There was no cost to the church. We just didn't have any billings for those months. The only cost of the church was that they had to pay DTE for the full amount that the church used for those months, as opposed to getting the discount that they were getting through the Sun Common. You can go to the next. A very pretty picture. That just really is showing this is, we wanted to put these, what you're looking at is the north side. There's the church and the parish hall, which we call the Peace and Justice Hive. We had wanted to put it over on the south side, but the Planning Commission told us that the Detroit Historic Commission was not going to let us put solar panels on a historic building. And because we were, at that point, it looked like the tax credits might expire. We were under some pressure. So we said, well, we got a flat roof. We'll put this many there, but we're not done. We're coming back. And sure enough, this year we came back. And when we finish this little deck, I'll tell you that story. Go on to the next. Unless there's a question about how they do that. But it's really very clear, very easy when they do these flat roofs. You can see those concrete, that's all it is some cement blocks that hold those things up. And they're not mechanized. They don't follow the sun. So it's a very passive fixed system. And it's, like I said, it's a small array. It's equivalent of about 3 houses, really. Okay, you could go next. Because I wanted to, more to come. First of all, that shot you see there is taken from the 7th floor of the Godfrey Hotel, which is a hotel that got built since in 2023. And to the right, when you see the church to the right, you can see the flat array. To the left, you can see the part that's closest to you of the church, of the steep roof, is the where the high altar is, sanctuary. And the part that's cut off from this photo, Steve had a better photo of this, shows is where we're putting them on the south side. In the background, you see the Michigan Central Station. So that's where we're located, is Corktown. Southwest Detroit is where it says more to come. That's the area of where Southwest Detroit is. And we're in walking distance of downtown Detroit. And again, for us, partly those solar panels is a statement that's saying, we're not going anywhere. These things are good for 40 years, and so are we. Well, I may not be, but the church is going to be. I do want to tell you, I forget what the last one is. Is there, or is that it? The more to come. So back up one, thanks. Let me tell you about the more to come, because more came. This year, we through working through Solar Faithful and through this federal grant, that before they could claw the money back, we had already spent it. And the rule was, if you'd already spent it, you can't claw it back. We got panels for the south side. It's a lower roof along the aisle, along the church aisles. And sure enough, the Historic Commission staff recommended it not be approved when we applied for the permit. And so we asked for a hearing and got one. And I went along with our engineer from Solar Faithful and Michigan IPL, Emily, and made the case about why it should be there. And Emily made the case from an engineering standpoint and an architectural standpoint, saying, hey, it's that your own staff said those shingles that are up there are not historical. It's not like they were slate. They were asphalt shingles. So we're putting non-historical solar panels on top of a non-historical shingle. And but they were visible, right? And historic commissions, that's their big thing. They don't care what you do to the inside. They just don't want the outside to look any different. So I figured we weren't going to win this. So I figured I had nothing to lose, and I just threw the kitchen sink at it. I said, I hit them with the justice thing. I hit them with the fact that we're that this is part of our core values as a religious. It's religious liberty. It's a religious value of ours that's in our mission statement. And I also made a big point of saying you really do not want to make a dichotomy or make a fight between renewable and sustainability and historical values, because there's going to be times you're going to lose it. That's a false dichotomy, and we've got to find a way that both sides can maintain historic values, but still look for ways to cut our carbon footprint and embrace renewables. And I sort of ended with saying that not everything that's historical is a good thing. Tuberculosis is historical, and there was like 5 commissioners, and it went 3-2 in our favor, and they allowed it. And I realized, though, that the reason later I thought about what just happened is during the presentation, one of the commissioners asked us, are we part of a larger group? Are we part of a larger movement? And fortunately, the city of Detroit had invited St. Peter's to be part of what they called resilience hubs, where they were looking for places that in the event of big brownouts, blackouts, flooding, which has certainly occurred in several big parts of Detroit, are there places where neighbors can go, can come, can can get some respite. And with the solar and with the battery that we already have with solar battery backup, we're going to be able to keep the lights on, and people are going to be able to charge their cell phones. People are going to be able to charge their laptops and have connectivity. Maybe people are going to be able to bring some food to get refrigerated or frozen. We have a lot of food programs right now, so we use our refrigerators, but we're looking at other ways that we can be resilient. And I could point to the fact that, yes, we were part of a bigger thing. This was not an isolated thing that this one little church wants to save money and put solar panels on their historic church, but that we were part of a neighborhood, and we intended to be an active part of that neighborhood, and we intended to be a neighborhood asset. And frankly, that cut some ice. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I think there's a lot of ways that houses of worship can embrace the idea of renewables and embrace decarbonization without saying, oh, we can't, instead of saying we can't afford it. Can you partner with others? Can you, are there ways that you can collaborate with others whether it's about voting or it's about initiatives? But there's a lot of things that you could do. Let me see. The last thing I wanted to do was for us to put solar into context for us. And this may or may not be of any use for you, but for us, the solar panels are only one part of our issue of care for creation. We build it into our liturgy. It's every Sunday in our prayers for the faithful. It includes prayers about earth and water and air. We have a Good Friday. We have a walking Stations of the Cross that we've done for about 40 years now, where we take a life-size cross, and it's about a 3-mile walk. And the stations, about 10 or 12 of them each time, the focus is, where is Christ being crucified today? And one of those stations is almost always the Detroit River, or facing Zug Island and facing Southwest Detroit, where there's been so much pollution, and issues of assault on the earth is part of where Christ is being crucified today. So then we celebrate the season of creation, as I'm sure some of you do, and some other denominations do a season of creation. And Pentecost just gets a little too long, and we take the last 4 weeks or so and celebrate various themes of creation, whether land, water, earth. Issues of justice. So it's a season. There's seasons of creation, and we have special liturgies and readings. We've also done book groups with braiding sweetgrass and things like that. So it's part of something. It's not a one-off. It wasn't like, oh, let's take advantage of some grant money or something like that. We've tried to build this in. I never think that we do a good enough job of telling the story. I always feel like there's more that we could do there, but we'll keep at it. We'll keep at it. I talked really fast. I wanted to give you some of that context and some of that history of what we are doing and have done. And I'm very encouraged. And I'm also, when I do look back, oh, by the way, we also, from a creation care standpoint, when we finally were able to get our parking lot paved, we did it in an environmentally sound way, so that the stormwater runoff goes into bioswales before it reaches the storm system. It's slowed way down. And we also have an EV charging station now, so that the panels are going to partly be going to charging those electric cars and it's an electric zip car that we got put there, again, before they clawed back some of that federal money, that has been very well used. We're told that of all the, I think 8 or 10 that were put around the city, ours is one of the most used zip cars, and so we're still learning about how that whole thing is working out. But supposedly we're going to get a little taste of money from that as well. So that's, that's St. Peter's. Small, but a lot of partners and a lot of issues around with the water struggle. A number of you, some of you may remember when Detroit, about Flint's water struggles. Well, Detroit had at one point tens of thousands of houses shut off. And we had several members of the vestry, including our pastor, arrested for blocking where the trucks were trying to leave to go shut off more houses. And a few years ago, I was one of the people that went up to Lansing, and we took a tape and we took crime tape and encircled the whole Eagle building as a crime scene, because Nestle was doing things and all kinds of nonsense, and just declared it a crime scene. And there was a little bit of arrest with that too. But so solar's part of it. It's an important part because it's visible. If you all remember, I don't know how many of you had the Baltimore Catechism, if they still make them, but a sacrament is an outward sign of an inward grace. And for us, the solar panels are an outward sign of that we're trying to do something about our suffering brethren, and both the human and the more than human. So, yeah, those are the lessons that we're learning and have learned. I'm humbled by some of the Black churches, that the feeding programs that they are doing and the things that they are doing. If you think you don't have resources, you don't know from not having resources. It helps to have a champion. It helps to monitor performance and tell the story. And then again, I think all of you have probably learned this, and I have to keep learning it, is we've got to celebrate when good things happen and positive things are happening, because there are a lot of good things happening, and positive things happen.
These are great lessons. I want to hold a few minutes here so people can ask questions, because I think maybe that you've got some interest in people who've been quiet now and listening. And we're 15 minutes from our end, so I just wanted to break in just for a second and see if there's someone who wants to ask.
Bob, did you have a question? Bob Schirmer?
I just had a comment, and I wanted to build on what Bob said. At least in our experience putting solar in 2019, that was kind of our first step in what became part of creation care, and it really changes the culture, and that's what Bob, I think, was talking about. So yeah, we saved some money from generating electricity from solar, but we also cut our carbon emissions quite a bit, because we started paying attention to heating and cooling the building, and whether we were heating and cooling when the building wasn't in use or not. And we expanded into some other things. We got into composting and recycling and reuse, and the panels were part of a culture change, and we actually, probably saved a heck of a lot of money just from conservation that we count as part of our savings to pay for the panels.
That's great.
I can jump here with a question. David, thanks for prompting me. I had been interested in the performance reporting software that we'll get on our smartphones and apps, and perhaps on a electronic display or even a bulletin insert about how our reduction in greenhouse gas emissions is certainly the direct creation care benefit. The payback is beginning right away.
That idea of a display is something that I wish we were doing now, and we've got it. I hope that that's the next thing that we step our game up, because I think you're right. Those are great things for people to see.
Something else that came up in the chat is the idea of becoming a resilience hub. I think people have that as an idea, and something that you're saying, Bob, about what you did there, that because you went not only for the collectors but also for batteries, it changes the equation of what's going on there, because you're not just using the power that you can get when it comes off but you're also saving it, so that it means you've got some consistency and a possibility of remaining live, when the sun goes down. Can you say a little bit more about what that means to your parish and what people should be thinking about if they're thinking about this as an aspect of becoming a resilience hub?
Thank you. I'll say a couple things, but then Steve may have some things, or some of you may have some other things to contribute here. The technology has changed fast. 5 years ago, if you asked me, and people did ask me, like, what about batteries? And I'd say it ain't worth it. It's not worth it. It's not the payback is so long and you wouldn't get it. Well, the technology, first of all, the rates have gone way up. Also, the technology has changed. The same thing with solar in general. The technology has changed. Every house of worship has got at least, well, maybe not yours, but a lot of them have somebody who's pretty negative. And as soon as they hear something, they can tell you why something won't work. Well, a lot of times people don't know what they're talking about. And batteries have really changed, so that now it's much more feasible to have that than, frankly, I think, than it used to be. Steve? Or anyone else? Any thoughts about the battery? Because that's been I've been pleasantly surprised, and really glad that we could, because our system it was not off the grid. It was, if the power went down, we were not able to use our panels to produce electricity usable for us. But now we're going to be able to do that. So thank you, David. That's a big change.
Yeah. So to the point of, did we have anyone who was negative? Then in our situation with Genesis of Ann Arbor, Murray, who Steve referred to, Murray Rosenthal, who's the board president for Solar Faithful in our sister congregation, Beth Emeth. He is so out in front that you really have to run to keep up with him. But it wasn't always the case that Genesis was there. There was a time before. Now that it's there, it's really easy to say yes. And it gets easier over time because anyone who objects can look at the bills, right? One of the things that Steve said in your presentation was that there's different factors, and it's like you don't really care what gets you on the train, but people are coming to this with worries about about finances. The worries about finances take this kind of incoherent thing that kind of freezes you in your tracks. And until you see it, it's like until you see the bill go down, someone is going to be negative. Someone is going to say, "Oh, but that's not going to work," right? Mm-hmm. So you're dealing with some of that when you say, "Well, I'm going to buy the maintenance contract on the inverter, the insurance policy on the inverter." I forget what the term was you're using, but what you're doing there is you're actually purchasing something which may or may not be the most cost-effective use of your money. Turns out it was, because the inverter did go, but extended warranties often are not. But it was the way of taking away that fear.
Yes.
Yeah. So you always
That's
have
it.
that as you're getting into it. You always have that, the fear of the unknown. Well, maybe this isn't going to work out financially. And I'm sure it was there at St. Clair's because I've been there long enough to understand that these things are always present there. It's just,
Mhm.
there's something else there as well. So it's really a kind of balancing act. But you're right about, battery technology has gotten quite a bit cheaper, and power rates keep going up, and we're building data centers in places we shouldn't be, and we will be paying more for power in the future for that reason.
Mhm. Yeah. Hey, Jennifer, are you still with us?
Yes, sorry, I was
I
having
just
a
thought
hard time.
Jennifer's been working with a bunch of church. No, that's okay. I just thought you might want to speak a little bit about your experience with resiliency with the many churches that you're working with in Detroit.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if you can
The
see me okay.
community change grant.
Y- Yeah,
Yeah.
just to what Bob was saying. Because St. Peter's has the corner shower and laundry and also Manna Meals like he was talking about, resiliency makes so much sense for a congregation like St. Peter's. And we're working with 12 other sites in Detroit that are getting that solar batteries and generators so that when the power goes out, they can be fully resilient. And some of them bidirectional EV charging so that even a vehicle could pull up and power the church.
Thanks for that, Jennifer. Perry here out in California. I appreciate that. Is most California projects now are always including battery storage systems because of the recent spikes, continued rate hikes in California. Wildfires have been a big problem for us, and replacing the grid infrastructure has put things through the roof. So that does put us into that potential ministry role as a resiliency hub. And Robert, I really was moved by and grateful for your testimony about how it affects the congregation, how the infrastructure, the investment in something that's so visible and so tangible, it moves our hearts to be more receptive to the greater creation care. That ministry is really powerful.
Yep.
I was also struck, Bob, with the justice argument that you first made might not have been enough in itself. The argument that said that tuberculosis was also historic, and you don't want to be there. But that might not have been quite enough to get 3 out of 5. But when it's coupled with the other justice argument that we have a responsibility in the neighborhood, and that the witness that you're part of something larger to be that resiliency hub for the neighborhood.
Yeah, no doubt that
Actually,
was
coupling creation justice with economic and racial
social
justice. It's
justice.
really social justice, and so I was really struck that the first justice argument might not have been accepted, but when there's 2 or 3 that come together, it starts to be more believable to people from the outside, and so that probably got you your 3 out of 5.
I agree with you
That it really
100%,
does
David.
actually.
It was a city commission, right? And when they realized, oh, you're part of a citywide effort that the mayor's office of sustainability had invited St. Peter's to be part of one of their resilience hubs, I don't think they wanted to really say no.
Well, still 2 out of 5 still did, right?
Oh yeah, I mean one of them right from the beginning, the first one said, "I don't think a solar panel belongs on a historic building." Period. So we already know we already knew we had one no vote, but
Yeah.
Steve, I
you can
wonder
take it,
if I might interject and just ask you and the group in the Episcopal Church, as we give greater credence and investment to our ecoregions, our diocese sharing common concerns and prayers for creation, whether that be air, water, population, food, resiliency, such. I wonder if there's something that that the ecoregions are being called to be more responsive to solar faithful, the missions and visions that we could work together that way. Just wondering.
Yeah, I don't know if Heather has more to say about that. I don't know a lot about the eco regions. I'm very excited that we're moving in that direction as a denomination. So,
I don't know that I have a lot to add about ecoregions. So this is Bishop Kathleen Bascom is the church-wide person to contact about that. So when you have a group of bishops ready to work together, they contact Kathleen to get signed up with that. And then that's how the church is working right now with the creation care bucket.
I think the thinking, as I understand it, is that different dioceses, because they have the same ecological concerns, will have reasons to work together in particular ways. And so rather than coming from the outside of the church and saying, well, because you're all in Province 5, you should all work together, it's really saying there's a notion that we should be working with people who are working on the same issues because of the same ecological concerns. So it has to do with what region belongs from an ecological or environmental perspective, as opposed to the regions that are the way we're organized within the church. But I don't see that that's quite gelled yet. I think it's in process, and so that's something that Heather's saying is that's what Kathleen Bascom's role is to help that along to where that's really more coherent. I think it's a good way of thinking about things, because if you're working with allies based upon narrower interests, then there's a better chance to be able to advocate together for something, because you can focus on the same things. So there's a reason that I think it's probably worth quite a bit of attention, but I think it's relatively new.
do we know how many ecoregions there are now? No? Okay.
When I started looking because of a common green calendar of events for the Episcopal Church, we had 3, and that was just a year ago. And now we're up to 7, and I think they're proposed to be 11 by the end of this year. So it is indeed a movement, and it's an initiative by our presiding Bishop, Sean Rowe, who was very receptive to Kathleen Bascom's grasslands initiative, grasslands network. That was the ecoregion, rather, out of Kansas, and so that's why she was called to be Bishop Rowe's consultant there. And the bishop's office is giving us monthly conversations, just a monthly creation care call that's both inspiring and informative.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I just put a link in the chat with a source that I've looked at before. This is from Sewanee. And the definitions that an ecoregion network is a nature food faith association.
Thank you. I didn't know about those.
Yeah. Right. We're coming to, well, we're actually a minute or two past. Any final thoughts to wrap up, Steve or Bob?
Well, I would just say if you are interested in talking about either the congregate lending or solar for your congregation, please let us know. We'd love to talk about it and spread the word.
Great. And Heather.
Yeah, Solar Faithful, I think, is going to be a great resource to a lot of houses of worship. You know, it beats much better than sort of just going it alone or doing your own thing.
Okay. Thank you all very much. We'll have summary email sent out soon, and we will see you all next month, same time.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, David.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
all.
Heather. Thanks, everybody.